Good morning. You're welcome to The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. My name is Rume Paulson. It's Monday, the 27th of January, 2025. Yeah, I know it's payday right now for most people. In fact, the next few days, most people will be getting alerts. And finally, January is almost over. How are you doing today? Anyways, today is Holocaust Memorial Day and is always observed on January 27 every year. It's a Memorial Day commemorating the victims of the Holocaust, which resulted in the murder of 1/3 of Jewish people, as well as countless members of other minorities by the Nazi Germany. And of course, it was said to be an attempt to implement their final solution to the Jewish questions. And so every day, every 27th of January, every year, people gather just to gain more knowledge about it and look for safer measures, better measures to ensure that we have a safer world. So of course, we're commemorating all those people, the victims of the Holocaust today, January 27. On today's breakfast show, we'll be looking at several hot topics, one of which is World Bank urges CBN to stay the course on inflation control. Another topic that we'll be discussing much later in the show is NADF pledges to revolutionize Nigeria's agricultural sector for economic transformation. We'll also be taking global stories that made it to the front pages of our national dailies, as well as some top trending stories. But first, let's check out our quote of the day. And our quote of the day says, I am not a product of my circumstances. I am a product of my decisions. And that is according to Stephen R. Covey. He's an American educator. In fact, he's an author, a businessman, and a speaker. And his most popular book is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you haven't read that, I think you should. A lot of people have read it and they've become better for it. And of course, this morning, he's saying, I am not a product of my circumstances. I am a product of my decisions. So what decision are you making today? January is almost over. I'm sure when we were entering into 2025, you had your vision board, you had your New Year resolutions. I'm going to start working out this year. I'm going to take my fitness more seriously, or I'm going to go back to school, or I'm going to learn a course, or I'm going to try baking or a new skill or something. I'm sure there are so many things that you've put down, and sometimes your circumstances can be limiting. But what do you do? What kind of decisions do you make even in those limiting circumstances? And that's what Stephen is saying today, that you're not a product of your circumstances. It's the decisions that you make. So it's important that you start to make the right decisions every day. If you're just going to sit somewhere and say the world is going to, or life is going to happen to me, and whatever life gives me, that's what I'm going to take, I'm sorry, you're always going to be in that same position every single day when you do nothing. But if you do something, at least you're casting your nets into the waters, and you might just catch something. You might just be better for it. You might just have a beautiful life that you've always wanted. But that depends on the decision that you're making today. So I am not a product of my circumstances. I am a product of my decision, which means I need to start making the right decisions every single day. No more procrastination. No more saying I will do it later, or just sitting and worrying. Instead, I'm making the decision to take the bull by the horn and saying, yes, I can do it. I will do it. And my life will be better for it. All right, that's it for our quote of the day. We'll move over to some top trending stories. This first one says, Lagos, Rivers, and Delta lead in domestic debt burden. The Debt Management Office, DMO, reports that Lagos, Rivers, and Delta states collectively account for about 38% of Nigeria's total domestic debt stock as of September 30, 2024. with the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory owing a total of 4.21 trillion naira. Lagos State remains the highest debtor, holding about 853.43 billion naira, which represents over 20% of the nation's subnational debt, though this figure reflects a 3.67 decline from June 2024. Delta and Rivers follow with about 342.53 billion and 389.20 billion naira respectively, highlighting fiscal pressures in these economically significant states. Some states demonstrated notable reductions in debt, showcasing a fiscal prudence. Akwa Ibom reduced its domestic debt by 5.17% to 126 billion naira, while Cross River shared about 14.20%, settling at 133.1 billion naira. Jigawa retained its position as the lowest debtor at 1.26 billion naira, reflecting a significant 30.38% reduction. States like Kaduna and Ondo also maintained cautious fiscal management with reductions of about 6.93% and 7.35% respectively. Conversely, states such as Delta, Adamawa, and Enugu recorded substantial increases, with Enugu's debt surging by 32.07% within the quarter, raising concerns over fiscal sustainability. Overall, the report highlights Nigeria's rising public debt, which grew by 5.97% to 142.3 trillion by September 2024. While Lagos continues to lead in domestic debts, its effort to reduce borrowing signify progress. The fiscal disparities between the states underscore the need for tailored financial strategies to address the unique economic challenges of each region. Debt. Of course, one thing that people would always speak about is it's okay to, always okay to borrow. But the monies that you're borrowing, we should see the dividends of it. We should see what you're doing with those monies. For instance, Delta States, of course, has increased their own borrowing within a quarter. But it begs the question, what is this money being used for? Because are you seeing any, substantial development in that state or in that region? Not necessarily. So what are the monies being used for, aside paying salaries, and of which, of course, how much are you really paying for salaries that you haven't been paying before? Lagos State is a state that, of course, when it comes to our commercial capital, Lagos is the one. It's a cosmopolitan city. There's so many businesses here. They're taking LIRS, obviously the Lagos State tax, right? So you're wondering, how come you're still borrowing even though your state makes a lot of money? On one hand, they've been able to reduce their borrowings, but of course, with the amount of people, the influx that comes into Lagos State every single day, it's not even every single year right now, every single day, there's so many things that they need to cater for, so they probably have to fix the roads more times than before, but still, what are you doing with those monies? I'm not saying do not borrow, but if we're saying that our debt is in trillions, how do you expect to pay back? For states like Jigawa, other states that have been able to look at, financial prudence, which is great, and, you're paying back what you owe as swiftly as possible. That's what we expect to see. If you're borrowing money, borrow it, use it for the project that, is been designed for, and when you get it back, pay it back. That's what we expect. Because the truth is, if this is our own internal debt, right, then what happens with what we're owing other countries or the World Bank or, IMF and all of that? That's the only way we can grow, if we're able to stop borrowing, if we're able to use what we have, to develop our nation. If we're able to say, we're not going to go into corruption anymore, we're not going to try to siphon government funds or taxpayers' funds. Instead, that money is going to be used for what it has been designed for in the first place. That's the only way we can grow and develop our nation, to be honest. And I think that's what we should be looking at. That's what we should be striving for every single day, that how can Nigeria become a better nation? We cannot be, the developing nation for as long as possible. We're over 60 years. In fact, October 1st, this year will be 65 years. Do you know what a 65-year-old man is? At this point, he's retired. Most cases, Even if you were, a magistrate or a judge, you're retiring. So imagine a nation that is as old as this, and we still do not have the basic necessities to look out and say we're proud of our nation. We still do not have, pipe-borne water in certain areas. We still do not have good roads. We still do not have, healthcare system, a working healthcare system, basic education for our kids. We still do not have power. There's so many things that we're still looking at, but then we're borrowing so much and we're not seeing what the monies are being used for. We need to stop. We need to go back to the drawing board, say what is going to work for Nigeria. And I'm telling you what's going to work is when corruption is eradicated and we reduce our borrowings, we reduce our spendings. I understand there's always going to be the cost to governance, yes, but still, we need to be able to be prudent with our finances, and that works in every sphere of life. So it's not even just the government, for even individuals as well. But now we're talking about the government, so we need them to be prudent with taxpayers' funds. All right, another top trending story says CMDs urge federal government to improve health workers' welfare to curb exodus. Chief Medical Directors, CMDs, of Nigeria's university teaching hospitals have called on the federal government to increase salaries and improve working conditions to curb the mass exodus of health workers. Speaking at the 2025 budget defense in the House of Representatives, CMDs like Professor Wasiu Adeyemo of Lagos University Teaching Hospital highlighted that poor pay and unfavorable conditions are driving skilled professionals out of the country. Despite government investments in hospital infrastructure and specialized programs, many healthcare workers are leaving due to economic pressures. Lagos faces added challenges as state-run hospitals and private institutions offer higher pay, attracting doctors and nurses and pharmacists away from federal facilities. The CMDs warned that without competitive salaries and better working environments, tertiary hospitals could face severe staff shortages. They emphasized the need for urgent reforms to retain healthcare professionals and sustain the quality of medical services nationwide. Japa, I think this is what it's called now in our local parlance, Japa syndrome. Everybody is looking for greener pastures. Everybody's looking for, something better. And one thing that we've always said is the push and pull factor. Something that is pushing you away and something that is pulling you in. And sadly, Nigeria at the moment, with the economic realities, is pushing a lot of people away. And of course, you have other countries like the US, Canada, the UK, that are pulling them, looking for these health workers. And when there is better pay, when the economic realities for them are better, they have all the basic necessities of life being covered, of course, they're going to move. Everybody wants a better life for themselves. And if we're looking to say we want to be able to retain the people, because why are we training these people? These are skilled workers that they've gone to school here, they're probably working here, and then boom, because the economy isn't the best, they have to move. If we've trained them and invested in their lives, why can't we look for ways to keep them in? And in this case, we're talking about salaries. They're probably being, underpaid. The working conditions, the welfare, not great. These are things the government need to look into. And the reason being, if our healthcare system isn't working properly, when people are sick or when there's an emergency, what happens? So for the government officials, it's easy for them. They can obviously fly abroad if they're sick. But how about the people here? So who are you going to govern if everybody dies? Or if everybody isn't well? So we need to be able to invest, into the healthcare system. Not just healthcare, of course. We're talking other things like education and the power in Nigeria, but the health of the people matters a lot, and we need to be able to say the doctors, the nurses, all of the healthcare operatives or professionals, we need them to be okay for them to want to stay, to avoid the mass exodus that is happening right now. And we've seen a brain drain in that sector. Hopefully, we're going to look for ways to bring them back, but we need to put our house in order where they can stay and there's better working conditions for them. All right, another top trending story says SERAP sues federal government NCC over 50% telecom tariff hike. The Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, has filed a lawsuit against the federal government and the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, over the recent 50% increase in telecom tariffs. The hike raised call rates, data costs, and SMS charges, sparking a public outrage. SERAP argues that the move violates citizens' right to freedom of expression and access to information, calling it arbitrary, unconstitutional, and unfair. Filed at the Federal High Court, Abuja, the suit seeks to halt the implementation of the hike, which SERAP says disregards legal standards and stakeholders' consultation. The organization is also demanding the nullification of the NCC's decision, citing its adverse impact on millions of Nigerians struggling with poverty and rising living costs. Subscriber groups have joined the opposition, issuing an ultimatum for the NCC to reverse the hike by January 29, 2025. SERAP maintains that affordable communication is a fundamental right and urges the government to prioritize citizens' welfare. Kudos to SERAP, who is always fighting the good work. However, I understand where the telecoms, operators are coming from, because this amount, whatever tariff we're paying right now, hasn't been increased in about 12 years. So with inflation that we've seen in the past 12 months, in fact, we understand the need to increase the tariff. But on the other hand, because a lot of people are going through a lot right now in Nigeria, when we think of how the economy has been shaped in the past few months, it might not seem as the right time to have that increase. And 50% is quite a lot. You would expect maybe 10%, 20%, 30% at most. But 50%, if you were to pay 4 naira for each SMS that you send, right now it goes to about 6 naira. If you were to pay about 11 naira for your calls, it goes to about 16 naira, or right now 17 naira per se. I don't know the math, but that's a whole lot. And it's not just for the elites. It's not just for the middle class that can easily afford this. Imagine the people who get less than minimum wage. Imagine the people in the villages. Imagine people in our rural areas that they need this communication to their family members in the city. Or imagine the farmers who need to send goods to the city. How are they going to communicate, especially when this tariff is now expensive, making calls, having to, buy data and all of that is quite expensive. So it's understandable that SERAP would obviously file this lawsuit, and other people feel the same as well. I think to meet in the middle, for us to have a balance, we just need to be somewhere around 20%. That's understandable because, of course, we know that these people, they definitely need to increase the tariff. They're paying salaries. Salaries have increased for most people. Most companies have to pay at least the minimum wage of 70,000 naira, even though it used to be about 35,000 naira before. Managing and servicing their equipment, it takes a whole lot of money. We know what the exchange rate is like right now, so they are spending way more. But still, we need you to understand what we're going through, especially if you're working here in Nigeria, or if your telecoms is in Nigeria. You know what's happening in Nigeria. You know how Nigerians are just trying to put their heads above water. So 50% is quite a lot. I think we should just meet somewhere in the middle. Our final top trending story says, states gear up for January payment of new minimum wage. Organized labor in Imo, Sokoto, Akwa Ibom, and the Federal Capital Territory have expressed confidence that their governments will begin paying the new 70,000 naira minimum wage by the end of January 2025, I beg your pardon. The Oyo state government has also already started paying 80,000 naira, depositing 12 billion naira to workers' accounts. Meanwhile, Ebonyi, Cross River, and other states remain uncertain about implementation timelines. The Minister of Labour and Employment, Mohammed Dingyadi, assured in December 2024 that most states would commence payment by January. Labour unions in affected states are urging governors to implement the wage and clear arrears, citing the harsh economic conditions of workers that they face. Oyo workers now receive an additional 50,000 naira for lower grades and over 180,000 naira for top grade officers. The Trade Union Congress, TUC, and the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, have called on all governors to honor their commitments. The unions warned that delays in implementing the new wage along with unresolved arrears could lead to unrest, stressing that salary payments are a right, not a privilege, amid rising inflation and other economic hardships. First question, this minimum wage was implemented last year, I think around April. What is taking them so long to be able to implement it? It has been put as a bill, passed rather, since 2024. So it's taken over about 9 months or so for it to be implemented. Why is that? Knowing the harsh conditions that Nigerians are facing right now due to the economy, I don't think that should take too long. It's a no-brainer, because if you look at the price of commodities right now, if you go to the market and you try to price a bag of rice, if you try to buy eggs, even the little things, bread, you see how expensive they are. 70,000 naira, in my opinion, doesn't even equate to how much we spend. When you think of transportation, when you think of buying fuel, the least you can buy fuel right now is about 970 naira per liter. So other stations are selling for over, 1,000 naira. When you put all the costs together, 70,000 naira is not enough for a family to live on, for even a single person to live on. Because if I was to buy food in a day, just feed myself in a day, I'm going to be spending nothing less than 2,000 naira. And if you do the math, by 30 days, that's over 60,000 naira for food alone. And trust me, 2,000 naira is probably going to be for just one meal. So you're forced to do intermittent fasting with that. So when you now think of transportation, paying your rent, just by putting clothes on your back, the basic necessities of life, 70,000 naira is nothing compared to how much people spend. So I'm wondering why these states have taken so long to be able to implement this. Fine. We thank God that they've come out to say, yes, this January they will, and I hope that they pay the arrears, because workers, they need their salaries. They need good wage to be able to take care of themselves. And hopefully we'll even get past this 70,000 naira, and we're looking at something that would be of value to these people. All right, that's it for our top trending stories. We'll go on a short break. We'll look at the weather, and when we return, we'll be reviewing the papers. So please stay with us.